This is AV SuperFriends Off the Rails, an almost regularly scheduled open discussion on audio and video in higher education. We'll sound off about our most brilliant ideas, our dumbest mistakes, and everything in between. And because this conversation will almost certainly go off the rails at some point, we'll end up covering just about everything else. And now, the AV SuperFriends. For May 21st, 2021, it's the AV SuperFriends Off the Rails. Welcome back, everybody. Time for another Friday afternoon podcast adventure. You know, we almost didn't want to start this podcast. We were having such a good time beforehand just chatting about stuff.
We almost forgot to hit record.
Well, you know, we record everything anyway. One of these days, we're going to delve into those archives, because if you really want like a year and a half worth of just us talking about
time you will never get
AV
back in your
and
life,
miscellaneous stuff, like today, the riveting discussion of how many Star Wars movies actually are there. The answer is 3. We have all that stuff recorded, so maybe one of these days we'll release that.
Soon we'll release it at a fee, and you can have it.
Probably shortly after all of us want to lose our jobs.
So anyway, my name's Chris Dector. I'm joined today by Justin, Marc, Rachel, Jamie, and Larry. Got the whole crew here for you today.
The full gang.
We are going to discuss the summer projects that we're looking forward to, and we're going to talk about some increasing challenges in finding an AV labor force. But first, let's dive into the news a little bit here. This news is actually a few weeks old, but it's still worth discussing. So in late April, I believe it was, Trox, formerly Troxel, but they changed their name a lot, and they bought somebody, or they got merged with CDI or something. They bought Tierney. And
Did it go that way, or was it the other way around?
I think Trox bought Tierney.
I'm not sure.
Somehow the two are now one. They're called Trox and Tierney.
Yeah, I don't know what their actual label is.
I believe they're literally just called Trox plus Tierney. They were like, we're just two companies and something. So anyway, I think they're going to maintain, at least for the short term, I think they're going to maintain their individual corporate brands, and they may come up with another name. I don't know what that's going to be. But Marc, you had an interesting take on this, that it's not just one company buying another. It's not just a standard merger and acquisition, or one integrator buying another integrator and kind of making a bigger labor force. But you had a very specific take on it, which I think is probably correct. But why don't you fill us in on that one?
Yeah, I believe, and then if I'm putting my bet down, this is a acknowledgement of the higher education and just education vertical, right? And so, and going after and aligning specifically to go towards that market. And I've actually may or may not have had some conversations with people who may or may not work with one of those companies. And it was kind of acknowledged that, yeah, we did some higher education, and they did some higher education and other installation. And we felt that if we combined forces, we could actually go after that entire market and really specialize in that education world. Now, it may be speculation, I know, but I think it is telling, as many here work for higher education institutions and education corporations of some level, that we've often said, well, maybe we don't get the respect as an actual vertical and market that exists. And is this the moment where outside businesses have said, you know what, that is an actual valuable pool for us to go fish in, so to speak, and make money in? And I think it's telling that we see more specialized businesses, integrators, and even design firms going into education as a full market. That's my take. That's what it looked on the surface from at least 30,000 feet.
And I would agree with your assessment there. I think you're dead on. I think that they are seeing there's a lot of potential in the general education market, especially in K-12, to get in there and make some sales. I guess the way I would think of it is, there's a lot of schools who now have money from states and federal and all that. Most of those schools, let me rephrase, many of those schools are not well staffed up on AV savvy, employees. They have an IT guy who's doing other stuff or whatever, and they also has to deal with the projectors. And frankly, they're easy to push around. And I think they're seeing an integrator come in here and saying, hey, we can push these people around and sell a whole bunch of stuff, and kind of corner the market on this. I mean, I guess so. Kudos to them from a business standpoint. I'm not sure I really agree with that overall concept, but I think that's what's happening.
I think they're getting the sense that there's a lot of money flying around there. We just got to get these two nets stitched together, and we can catch some of those dollar bills that are flying around. So that's kind of how it looked to me. And you know what? Go after it, I guess. And I know there's some people that we know that if they can get themselves on a K-12 contract, man, that's lucrative.
Yeah.
Well, especially if the idea is let's light up an entire school district with some sort of solution. So you're not going in someplace and selling 20 projectors. You're selling 250, 500, 700, 1,000 projectors. So it, yeah,
a 1,000 cheap projectors that we're going to charge. As
I didn't say
really
they were
expensive.
Good. I just said projectors. So.
Well, the new thing in K through 12 classrooms is just throw a 55-inch TV on a wall, no matter what the size of the classroom is.
Yeah, it's an auditorium with a 55-inch
TV. By the way, it is a true TV. Yes.
Yeah, it's just a TV because we're installing 50 of them right up the road right now at a K through 12 school.
TV. Let's get it right.
It is smart because when you put it on the network, you can also broadcast to it from outside the building over the network without any passwords.
Clever.
That's a whole nother thing.
That seems like a bad idea.
Yeah, they're okay. They'll figure it out. And then on top of that, they also name their TVs per the classroom room number, so you know exactly what room number you're casting to.
Are there cameras attached to these TVs?
Why not?
No, not yet.
This sounds like a lawsuit waiting to happen.
Probably so.
I feel like this whole thing is just a massive project-based learning initiative that really it's about incepting these kids into learning networking skills and computer broadcast skills.
So you're saying you want to teach them cybersecurity by giving examples of how not to do it?
Yeah,
on
we're
the
to
job
turn
training.
them all into white hat hackers, right? And whoever
It's like
figures
active
out
learning.
Yeah, exactly. No, this is great curriculum design. I'm for it.
It's real world.
It works for big businesses. If you hack our servers, we're hiring you. I mean, I hope that I like the validation that these companies, the integrators, are starting to see that education is a market, right? And that there are opportunities here. I just hope they don't fall in the trap that I've seen some smaller integrators get into, where it is cheap and quantities, and they're not really doing any service. It's like, if you're going to do this, be a specialist and give the right solution to these folks.
Are you providing value, or are you just moving paper, right?
And that's what I hope. And I really, so I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt that they look at this and say, well, there's too many trunk slammers out there just making a buck off of these K-12s or smaller higher ed, or even giant higher eds. I mean, we see a lot of money come through giant higher eds, and they don't get what they paid for.
Like, is this a market reaction, or is this like we really acknowledge this in what we're doing, or is it like are they chasing the money here? Or is
I think they are, because guess what? Is higher ed going to have all this money in 5 years?
Right. I think they're still they're going to determine that. They don't know. The answer is
I don't know about that.
Well, I think a lot of the market for this particular group is going to be K-12. Honestly, I think there's a lot of market available there.
So and I think
it seems we're only right to, like you said, they have a bunch of this money that they may not have in 5 years, but they have it now. And if someone comes in with a plan and says, "I can sell you this, and it will do the following things,"
right? Well,
and I see this as a sustainable market too, because over the past year, K-12 schools have undergone a curricular transformation that is not permanent, but will have permanent repercussions. Like in Virginia, where I live, they are redoing the math curriculum through something called the Virginia Math Pathways Initiative, whose main effect is going to be to create a whole bunch of new math extracurriculars at the high school level, including computer science, like logic and analysis, statistical research, etc. I grew up in Appalachia. They would never be able to staff those classes in Appalachia. That's going to be taught virtually. That's going to be a hybrid and virtual learning situation. Yep. So and we've proven over the past year that to a certain extent, when done well, when the right technology and curriculum are implemented, that works. So if you get a bunch of specialists in now who are implementing the technology to make that curriculum, which is coming down the line in about 5 years, then 5 years from now, they will have cultivated this widespread market that has an urgent need for that technology.
I'm just hoping that it doesn't end up with a bunch of like 360 view cameras sitting on the floor in the middle of a room somewhere.
Yes. Well, and that's
also
what
possible.
I'm trying to
that's my fear.
I'm like, please embrace this as a real thing and produce yourself as the market leader in the appropriate solution, not just a thing.
And by appropriate solution, you mean boundary mic attached to projector pipe screwed with sheet metal screw into ceiling tile, right?
That was a show. Come on now.
That
It was
was
a
a
prestigious university.
That was a prestigious university in New York.
In
Don't do it that
Northeast.
way. No, they said
All
New
right.
York specifically.
No, it wasn't. Yeah. Well. So I guess we're validated. I guess we work for an industry now. It's real that we're being preyed upon.
Well, yeah, so it's interesting that that's a good take. That people are now recognizing there is an industry here, and I'm hoping that they serve them appropriately. And Jamie, to your last point, I hope they have not just a solution, but the right solution, and they start making inroads on that. And if so, then kudos to them. So, I guess we'll see how that plays out the next time that you have a visit from a Trox plus Tierney person to your campus. So.
There's a great new digital magazine from Higher Ed AV Media found at higherEdAV.com, and we do a special monthly show where we actually stay on topic. It's a show where we try to really focus on a single topic and break it down into AV SuperFriends style. That's the AV SuperFriends on topic, found at avsuperfriends.com, higheredav.com, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, Google, and wherever else you get your podcasts from.
So today's first topic, anyway, we keep derailing ourselves during our own off the rails show. This is getting pretty egregious, but today's first topic we want to talk about is we're going to do some summertime show and tell here. So I've made this model of a projector out of macaroni, and this doesn't work on audio. No, so what we want to do is kind of keep this a little light, keep it fun. We want to all talk about a project we're working on this summer, something we're excited about, something that's maybe outside of the ordinary, something that's not just we're cranking out 25 more general classrooms, but this is something maybe it's unusual or something different about it, or something that just sounds like it might be a little more interesting, and frankly, something that we're looking forward to. So let's all kind of go around. Marc, we're going to start with you because for some reason, I don't remember why, you're first on the list in the template I made last fall.
Yeah, because there was a list. And
there is a list, and I literally copy and paste that list every time I make a template.
And I'm never ready, but here we are. On top of the Classroom of the Future building that we're doing, because there's always one of those.
Classrooms of the Future.
There's always one of those, and there's 19 classrooms over there that's going on.
Are they all from the future?
Well, they're not here yet, so yeah.
How did you get the buildings up to 88 miles per hour?
It's difficult. But we pulled it off. It's coming. But the project that I'm actually most excited about is we have a seawater program over at the coast, and we have 4 rooms over there with a bunch of livestock and all kinds of wild experiments going on with seawater creatures and sorts. And we're doing collaborative technology in that space, and we've done it a little bit differently. We've kind of configured those rooms in zones and have some unique collaboration software and hardware being used, and kind of developing a new standard of how we put that type of technology in a lab experience. We did a lot of work with classroom experiences, but we didn't really put a lot of thought into the lab experience and student experience. And so we took a new round in these spaces with some renovation money and some opportunity to meet with some faculty and really figure out like what would be their dream over here. And then we got some really good feedback and had a really clever approach with multiple kind of cameras, simple control, really easily delivered, but is really great for the far end student participant. And they are offering this program around the country. So it's going to be really cool to see them actually use these science labs, a little bit different use. There's no real front of a room, so it's just kind of a complete immersive science lab experience, and being able to actually provide technology around that use case for some champion instructors has been kind of cool and refreshing. It's not just kind of the same old thing over and over again. So I'm looking forward to that one. A lot of infrastructure, but it's well underway now. We'll be over there in a couple weeks.
I guess I have 2 follow-up questions to that. Is one, are you using the dental arms again?
We are using the dental arms. Yes.
All right. And 2, are you leveraging this? So we've talked about it, the idea of the static content through a Zoom room or through a second Zoom connection. Yeah.
So we've actually configured these spaces. So think of it as 4 major zones on dental arm cameras with kind of point and shoot cameras coming back. Those do go to a centralized switcher and are deliverable by way of a USB connection, but they also have an isolated output, and the instructors who are doing it really well actually come in with up to 4 or 5 laptops, and they'll take their video feeds from each one of those cameras, which does have its own audio ISO zone with it, and they'll provide the zones as parallel in their Zoom experience or whatever they're running as far as software, and the students can actually ISO each one of those zones on their own, and so they're not having to have an instructor kind of choose that, mix that, direct that to them. They can kind of pick and choose and highlight and spotlight as they go, which is really nice because it's video and audio of the livestock. And so it's kind of almost that museum type experience, but by way of collaborative software. And so kind of cool, little DIY, little point and shoot with the overhead cameras with dental arms, and it's pretty clever. So it's a little bit different. It's fun.
No, that sounds cool. The reason I ask about that is because it leads right into the project that I am interested in working on this summer.
Are you next on the list? Oh, you are.
I am next on the list.
It's valid.
I know because I made the list, and for some reason I didn't put myself first.
I just moved it.
You moved it? You can't change the list.
No, it's set.
Oh,
Don't move the list.
That's rule number one.
Then go, Chris.
The project that I'm looking forward to this summer, and it's actually been a project I've been working on for almost a year now. Good gravy. Is in our business school, and they were given a gift, some one-time monies, and did the right thing where they then cut the money in half and then cut it in half again, so it's sustainable, as opposed to let's go spend all the money right now and then in 4 years wonder how do we replace any of this stuff.
Let's go fly a kite.
Yeah. So the money came from a
bank.
Came from a bank, yeah. The money came from an English singer-songwriter, Phil Collins. And so we're calling this the Phil Collins Sussudio Stustudio. I'm kidding. No, it came from
I'm so disappointed. I was about to say you are not because I was so excited.
Rachel's like, when's the grand opening? Because I'm there.
Phil Collins rules.
So, John Mellencamp is formerly had a studio, an actual recording studio on the campus of IU Bloomington. So there you go. It's now a commercial kitchen or something, but anyway, he's not involved in this project, nor is Phil Collins. But it was a donation from a former graduate of the business school in IU, and so they've done very well for themselves, and they're giving back to the community. And so the idea here, and this all started pre-COVID, so it's just kind of interesting the way it happened. Is they said the business school is building up their online presence and their ability to stream courses and things like that, and they said we want to build a dedicated space to this. And then of course COVID came down, and everyone said this sounds like a great idea. How the heck did you start this a couple of months earlier? But the concept here is we're going to have both a self-service studio space as well as call it an operated operated studio space. But they're all kind of surrounded a central control room. So one person could, in theory, run each studio simultaneously, but also help out with others. So it's kind of an interesting space. What's a little interesting about it, and what I like, and the reason I asked Marc about the ISO feeds in Zoom, and that's what we're using now, but we can change this out, is we're doing the same sort of thing, but we're doing it with dedicated PCs in the rack that are going to be set up as Zoom rooms. So when the instructor in the room starts their standard Zoom call, and again, it's just PCs and USB, so if that becomes Teams or Google or whatever down the road, it doesn't matter. But we're setting up these PCs to be functionally, it's a Zoom room just because of it can auto answer a call, but they're functionally a dedicated ISO feed for the content. So we can route content to each of these, the encoders on it. And so its camera is functionally just whatever content's being sent to it. So whether it's the document camera or the PC or the interactive whiteboard or whatever it might be, it doesn't matter. We'll name them accordingly. But from the student standpoint, if I'm joined into this class, I can still go through and select any different content feed that I want, independent of what the instructor is currently has selected as the content feed. So it provides something of that kind of in class experience. If you think about, if I'm sitting in a classroom and the professor's over there working on the whiteboard, and then they're done and they go back over to the computer, I can still continue looking at the whiteboard and keep taking my notes. But if I'm on a Zoom call and the professor switches that feed, I can't see what I was just looking at a minute ago. It's gone. So by ISOing out those content feeds, we can maintain that capability for the students to have selection over the content they're looking at any given time. So I'm looking forward to implementing that and having our special grand opening concert with Phil Collins. I mean, no, that's not happening.
But it might.
So
And now he's looking forward to the cease and desist letters coming from the lawyers of one Phil Collins and one John Mellencamp.
One business school somewhere.
You know, if Phil Collins sues us, we've made it, y'all. It's okay.
I'll take it.
Phil Collins doesn't sue anybody. Phil Collins sues people.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
You walked right into
Is it my turn? Is it my turn?
It is.
You're next on the list.
Right. So mine's not so much technical. You know, we've done a few cool things lately. We've upgraded an auditorium with a 21,000 lumen projector. That was sort of fun, I suppose. We're about to do another one. My business is updating a theater downtown, putting a 22,000 lumen Sussudio 4K projector in. Haha. And there's some, I don't know, other cool things, emergency operations center. So it's about standard, you know, video wall here and there. Nothing too cool or too surprising. But the awesomeness is there's money floating around right now. And historically, WKU has not had a central funded approach to update rooms. And I've talked about this on the show. We're bouncing around all over campus. We can't respond very well. We're very reactive to everybody. We're almost like an integrator, just waiting on phone calls and things to break. Well, now that we have money, we're starting to buy 160 projectors, and let's make sure all the screens are right, and let's change the lighting. Let's do this holistically all at once, and then in 5 to 7 years, we can reevaluate. So I feel like this is the start of a brand new relationship between me and WKU, where we're actually getting somewhere to a refresh cycle. I feel it coming, guys.
My favorite part of that whole thing, Justin.
Like an official replacement cycle of equipment that we can actually predict.
That's mature, man. You're getting up there. I
know.
The piece I really loved about this, and you just kind of pass over real light, just a video wall here and there. Like, let's just acknowledge how far we've come.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's kind of like,
oh, you know, just you get a video wall, you get a video wall. Like, is that where we are right now? Is that?
Yeah, that used to be like a real showcase thing. Like, we're doing a video
now
wall
it's
next year.
just,
It's great.
we're doing one up here in the sports club, maybe, and we're doing another one over here, which is, you know, kind of cool. But if you've done them before, it's not really cool, right? If
we
it's
got them in all of our restrooms now. They're in
I think they're still
the
cool. I don't care what you
elevators.
guys say.
They're just, you know, dime a dozen.
I'm waiting to put in a direct view curved LED wall. That's what I'd be excited about.
No,
Haven't done one of
So
those yet.
having done a couple of those, they take a lot of like care and feeding.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It's just a
May
video
not be
wall.
exciting. Maybe nervous.
Oh, so I was at we were using our curved LED wall the other day, and somebody made the mistake of using a PowerPoint template that has a bright white background. And let me tell you, a bright white background on an
Everybody's
LED
blinded.
wall. And I was sitting the
Sunburn.
farthest away, and it was kind of like squinting, like, stop with that.
That reminds me of when I walked into the booth and saw the Samsung wall for the first time. They had it all blacked out around me. I literally had to look away the first 5 seconds I was looking at it, and I saw spot. I just walked out of the booth. I saw spots the rest of the day. I was like, I can't deal with this shit.
I think bright
too
white
good.
backgrounds on PowerPoints should be illegal.
It should ask you if you do that. You're like, do you really want to do this?
Are you
It should
sure?
pop
So
up.
Rachel, when we usually do it, we do a white background on a PowerPoint, but it's on a projected screen, and so it's that milky gray, and it looks fine. So
Yeah.
I had a person
Yeah,
who
that's
liked
it.
to
I'm
use
done.
one
I
that
don't-
had like a lens flare, so it was
like a
just
hot spot right in the middle.
Yeah.
It was offset, and it was a dark gray to a light gray to something, and it was just in the same spot. It was old Hitachi lamp projectors that were, and we'd had several burn out, and that was also the look of the old burnout. And every time we did this, I'm like, oh my god, that projector's broken.
Is that the equivalent of like analog hiss on a digital recording? Like you spend all this money and then you just throw this old analog lo-fi thing on it? Is that what people are doing now with PowerPoints? Just making them look.
I like
4:3
Jamie's
in
idea
sepia
there
tones?
because what you could do is you could create, a very low bit rate image in Photoshop with all the compression artifacts, and then save that as the template background. Yeah. And you'll be forever trying to figure out why the hell there's compression artifacts.
Man,
It looks terrible.
This is an 8K monitor. What the hell?
Larry, what
All
about
right, Jamie,
you?
go for it. What you guys
Or
doing
Jamie?
this summer?
Sorry, I'm the one who messed it up. I had to get it in.
Damn it, Mark, there's a list.
I know. I just wanted to make sure we had it.
Yeah, I'm done. Go ahead. Is Jamie ready?
I don't know. He's holding
Jamie,
up
I don't know if Jamie's ready. Jamie
ready.
has some
well, why don't I
issues.
jump in front of Jamie?
We need to
Yeah,
vamp
why don't
for
we go to-
time, so Larry will vamp while Jamie is busy.
Yeah. So Chris mentioned we can't talk about the 24 standard rooms we're doing. That's fine. I'm doing 28 this summer.
You got a list of 28.
I'm just going to take you out and post if that's what you're going to talk about. So you can go ahead and talk about it.
No, that's not it. I am pretty happy about that, but we're doing a new eSports arena, starting up a new program here centered on eSports. We've had an intramural group for a while. Now we're raising the stakes a little bit. And because the level of this eSports arena is way beyond things that I've done, because I've not really done an arena or eSports before. And so combining them into one would have taken a lot of engineering time. We're actually hiring out a consultant integrator group that does this all the time for universities across the nation. So I get to learn from them, and it's kind of cool. Normally when I bring integrators in, I know as much as they do. This is one of those times when the integrator who comes in, I can actually sponge knowledge off of. So I'm kind of excited about that.
You're going to be shocked when it's like a bunch of 17-year-old kids show up and they're building all this. And you're like, what? What's going on right now?
They're programming.
And then when it's done, and then you realize, so that's all it took? Well, shit, that wasn't that interesting.
You're going to be like, wait, this is just HD-based and white noise? What?
Actually, it's NVX, so it's not HD-based. But the interesting thing is they were telling me about the career path of the eSports athletes. They start to go down at like 17. So their prime years are before they're even in college.
Oh, man.
The hand-eye coordination drops after that.
Yeah. Esports athletes and gymnasts, all careers are over by 20.
So you're saying these kids are like blowing out their eyeballs by like 19? Yep. I got my third eyeball replacement coming up.
I have cataract surgery. I'm out. Season's over.
Get off my lawn.
Squinting so tight. And boom. So I do want to point out, Larry, that when you typed this in the list, you typed it as eSprouts. And
I was really excited until I
was like, man, we're going to have some cool underground cameras watching sprout roots grow and some really scientific shit
project.
here.
It would have been great, but it's just eSports.
But that's because my laptop is like way far away from where I stand for these calls. And so,
I really like the eSprouts. Maybe we should edit this in post and do just an eSprout thing and just kind of.
I am fine with that. It's been one of those weeks that if you want to do that, that works.
I vote yes.
That's the eSports thing is awesome. We've had some inquiries come here and they want to do it like a modular version of that, but they want to do they can bring it, drop it off, and like build it in the actual like basketball arena. And we've had some complex conversations around that. And it's
cool.
And so
who's moving that? Are they just going to call you like, hey, Mark, can you set this up real quick?
Well, that becomes the question. It's like, we'll just do this. And it's like, well, I need you to really dig and unpack the wheel. And I want to know who that is.
Ownership.
Because
define we.
We and wheel is who, because I'm not in that category.
Well, and if you look at really universities that have eSports, they use them a lot. There are a lot of intramural events, weekday events. It's a lot bigger than something we're going to set up in the gym every now and then.
So, Larry, what are you guys doing for that? Are you using is this a new dedicated space or?
This is a brand new space. Yeah. We had a large convention meeting room in one of the student centers, and we're blowing that out and putting an arena in there.
Cool. And that's been the contention.
That will also have a lot of gaming stations around just for
the fact that you had admin there, like this is real and this is a real thing. Because there are universities who are using that as like a recruiting model now. Like, hey, we have this brand new kick-ass eSports arena, which I think if this is news, whoever's listening to this right now, like if your university's never heard of it, like go jump on it, take credit for it.
Yeah, we've got an eSports program, and they're traveling and they host people, and it's something. They're on scholarship.
There's a company opening up like you have those big basketball arenas or where it's just like 15 courts. Well, they bought an old arena and they're opening an entire eSports complex that everybody will share, all the high schools. So that's where like the master tournaments will happen. But instead of having 15 little bitty ones, they're just throwing their money in this, and it's just like a hotel space where they can divide it out, and now you can have 6, or you can have one giant one, or you can have 3, and it's really a cool premise and idea, especially now that it's becoming such a big deal.
Well, the cool thing about having it on campus is we have boys and girls clubs and high schools contacting us about coming to the campus to show it to their students. So it's getting that pipeline of new students to come.
Yeah, you need that recruitment when they're like 12 because they're going to be done by the time they hit 17. You got to get them in there.
They're retiring at 17, viable. Hanging up their jerseys in the rafters, man.
Exactly. Are they digital? It's probably like a circular direct view wall all the way around. And it's just going to be a virtual NFT jersey sitting up there.
With white backgrounds, too bright to look at.
Yeah. There's money there somewhere.
All right. Jamie, what you working on?
All right. It's not super exciting like today, but I'm excited to the potential for tomorrow. Tomorrow in the Midwest being anytime between now and 10 years from now.
Like the future classroom?
Yeah. Well, the classroom of the future. Our pharmacy program is shared between 3 different sites, right? Missouri State, Springfield, the flagship Missouri and Columbia, and then us here in Kansas City, but we host the actual school. And so for years and years and years, they've just used either Polycoms or Cisco's or now Zoom or whatever to connect to each other and have these cross things. We're doing a massive upgrade, and for the first time, so this could be, a superb project or a super fired project, because I'm deploying a significant amount of NDI because most of these classes are produced. It's that television model that we discussed a few shows ago that has merits and doesn't, but we won't get into that today. But anyway, so I'm using NDI for a lot of the transport, and I did it for one reason only, and that's to get rid of Cisco's and Polycoms and Zoom and Teams and whatever, because we have straight fiber between the campuses. We have dedicated fiber pads from all the campuses in the closets of every space. So I have almost infinite bandwidth at my disposal. And what I would really like to do is just get away from using a computer-based or a codec-based or something kind of compression algorithm and just run it NDI. And go back to what Chris said, it's the ISO feed, right? Sometimes that ISO feed is the most important thing. And if the students at these locations, can plug into the floor or the wall or whatever, and they can get all these ISO feeds at the same time, now let's not go crazy. I guess it's not going to be 20 or 30, but you can have the cameras or the device, right? Or the feed. And it can all be done through a control system in one location or another. So if you have a technician, because they're all technician based. But if you have somebody in one of the campuses that's gone, somebody from somewhere else just goes, oh, here, click, done. And it's being piped down there. So what I'm doing now is not all exciting. It's the same stuff we're all doing, put in cameras, and it's just a distance education classroom. It's what can I turn it into later? What can we use this for later? And can I start deploying products without using codecs and Zoom licenses, and now we can marry in 12 different rooms, and you can still
as long
get
as you're still employed. Just making sure you're still there.
But the other thing is that it is a relatively new, NDI, and it's everyday classroom stuff, and I may or may not be using it, and instead of a product like NVX or Extron's deal or the true AV over IP. Because a lot of the NDI stuff, it's a $500 box, right? I can get a whole lot of $500
almost
boxes.
disposable. Yeah.
Yeah, and they still work. We have a pretty healthy backbone, network backbone and bandwidth. So it hasn't been an issue yet.
No, you're seeing a lot of movement to that kind of philosophy, like just kind of simplifying that and just moving it over network, and then you can have a bunch of kids with video game controllers producing everything for you.
And
the one thing I'm scared of deploying NDI in that manner, are you worried that somebody's going to need to send some type of protected content somewhere ever?
Don't
that one chance that...
We won't talk about that on this show.
Yeah. So it has come up. And so over the last multiple years, you couldn't really send that content over a Polycom either.
True,
right?
Exactly.
And so the instructors have
problem solved. They couldn't do it before. They don't know.
Yeah. So that's my point is, are expectations changing at all?
No.
Okay.
No, I think most of them, because it's a pharmacy program. Now, if this was, media science, no way, right? We've got to find some other way to do this. But because it's pharmacy and most of the content is cameras, or whether it's a dot cam or PTZ cam or a whiteboard cam, whatever, it's a camera, so that's not protected, or some sort of lame PowerPoint thing. But no, we're not too worried about that because they're already accustomed to sharing links ahead of time with the actual video that they want to show.
Gotcha.
So these instructors have already kind of built their
they're not coming in and just firing up Netflix and saying, "Hey, let's go wild and do this."
Or plug it in a laptop or anything.
Yeah. And the other part of that is that my experience with some of the NDI products out there is that it seems to ignore it and just pass it anyway. So,
well, the other complaint was we had some people. Yeah, we had some people trying to plug up their laptops to these NDI boxes, and it wasn't an HDCP thing. It was most of them don't support EDID. And so they didn't know to change the resolution on a laptop. Like, well, why can't I just plug it in? It just works. I was like, no, this doesn't work like that. Now, BirdDog's coming out with a wall plate that has EDID built in, but it's not released yet. And not sure how well that works. So
so that was something we had to really investigate. And I'm not putting an encoder decoder on every single endpoint, right? There's a lot of pre-switching or post-switching happening for that very reason. Because I need to have some flexibility in the BYODs. I need to have that kind of stuff. And so it's not necessarily my project this summer. And then we have the same repetitive stuff that you guys are all doing. But that's the one where I'm more excited to see where I'm at with it a year from now, 2 years from now. Because right now it's just going to be Zoom. I'm just using it as an internal transport. But about the second that I get all of these sites hot up, which is going to be at the end of July, you can bet your butt that I'm going to be trying to send video across these fiber paths and see what happens. And at that point, it's either going to fail spectacularly, and I will be unemployed,
and you won't be on this show because we won't have a connection anymore. And then we'll just be like, where'd Jamie go?
I will have my own white paper out there, and I will become the new AV media darling, Larry. Because Larry's out there, he's getting his name all over the place. So I'm going to be that guy. I'm just throwing you props, Larry. Really. You've had like 3 big things lately. That's pretty cool.
3?
Blown up.
Well, the nursing school thing.
You got the FBI Most Wanted and
there's that one. But
milk carton.
That.
That milk carton. Have you seen this, man?
You were on 2020 the other week. Yeah. All of that.
So, all right. So Rachel, you want to tell us about a cool project you're working on? Something interesting this summer? Keep it high level.
We can actually talk about.
If you're allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, the coolest thing I'm working on right now is 100%, 1000% under NDA.
Whoa.
Good, spill it.
Super secret.
You can be super fired too.
But here's some exclusive content from Rachel.
No, but I'm so excited about it that I super want to work on it. So I'm not going to tell you.
Does it solve all of the problems? Or just
it's
does it
really
solve any
more
problems?
Well, I don't know. It might solve some problems. It might solve some very big, serious problems, actually. But, it'll take a while. Sorry, you're not going to get it out of me, damn it. So I will just say that, I'm more on the telling stories about cool tech shit side of things than I am on the actually getting to build cool tech shit side of things. So I think the thing that I'm working on that I'm most excited about right now is kind of AV adjacent. It's an event for one of our clients called the Kronos Group that develops all kinds of like compute standards. And one of the things they work on is standards to make 3D graphics more ubiquitous, more usable. And they are releasing a bunch of stuff this summer, some of which is still under embargo, so I can't get too specific, but a bunch of stuff that is intended to make it just a lot easier and more consistent to use 3D graphics across different platforms. So that means it's going to get a lot easier to use 3D models in the classroom, for instance, no matter what equipment you have. You won't need specialized gear. You won't need really, really high-end graphics processors. You'll be able to access it, build it and deploy it on any mobile phone, any standard laptop, tablet, browser, over the web. It's just going to make 3D lighter and more ubiquitous and more democratically available, and make it perform more consistently, which I think is really, really important, especially for like training scenarios. Because if you've got a student who's using one device in one classroom and another student who's remote and using a different device, and a 3D asset that they're both supposed to be learning from looks different to each of them, then they're not having the same learning experience. Then they're not learning the same things. You know, if the 3D asset that they're looking at is something like, say, for instance, a virtual body that they're supposed to be examining in a pathology class, if the color doesn't render the same on both devices, they might come up with different diagnoses. They might arrive at different conclusions. They're not going to have a like legitimate, consistent educational experience. So I'm pretty excited about the work that this client is doing. I'm pretty excited about getting it out there, and I'm pretty excited about what it's going to mean for what different industries broadly can do with 3D graphics.
So this is not like the little baseball card that when you move it.
The lenticulars?
No, not like lenticulars. This is, I mean, it's funny because they all like came together and started doing this stuff for stores, right? For shopping. That's money moves the world. And those were the people who first like, well, we want people to be able to hold up a phone and see the chair in their living room, so that then they want to buy the chair.
But we all know that the first use isn't shopping; it's going to be the adult entertainment industry.
Usually,
we all know
I'm sure
that.
once they get the haptic interfaces figured out, we'll be right there.
Good Lord!
But as long as it's still just visual, I think that it's going to be commerce led.
Coming to a school near you.
But only in the classroom of the future. So.
Yes.
It might build an arena around it.
The classroom of the future is open-minded.
Yeah. Hey, studying bodies, whether it's pathology or other things.
Sex ed, right?
Hey, for some people, Jamie, those are the same topic. So. All right. Well, we've ruined that one. Let's throw a quick commercial in here and come back on the other side. Do you have a question for the AV Super Friends, a topic to suggest, or were we just really, really wrong on something and you'd like to give us a piece of your mind? Well, don't just yell at your computer. Send us an email and we'll actually read it. Mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. We're always looking for good ideas to steal, discuss openly. And if your message is just full of great stuff, we might just invite you on the show. Mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. All right, so for our final topic this week, this was not a planned topic before Wednesday, but we started discussing kind of some of the troubles we've been having recently.
Complaining.
You know what? Complaining, yes, openly complaining. But I think just, describing with colorful metaphors.
Bitching and moaning.
Those Wednesday meetings are the best.
Yes. So we were describing the difficulty we've been having, and I think this is pretty much universal, but to different extremes and different levels at each institution. But the difficulty we've been having with commercial integrators, and not the quality of the work, but their availability. We have not had good luck recently, or let me rephrase, we've all recently experienced problems with integrators not being as available as they once were, and they're just jammed up with work. So I guess the question to the group here is, where is the bandwidth of available labor from AV integrators? I mean, it used to be you send out an email, you pick up the phone, and you got a couple of guys there in 2 or 3 weeks scheduled and putting in your new auditorium or whatever. And now they're booked solid, or they're hey, we're 4 months out, or we just don't have anybody who can do that work. What are you guys seeing out there?
It's a tight market right now. I know we've had we're trying to catch up on 2019, right? We've gotten to that work order, the now serving order from last 2 Novembers ago. And so our internal bandwidth is gone. Like we're so busy, and then we're trying to have other firms do outside work for us. And we have new buildings and new projects and expansion. And we're literally just having electricians, they're struggling to even try to find any subs, and so now you got people trying to install stuff they've never even touched before, because they have to make good on contracts at some level, because their plan was to bring in a sub, and so now we have subs who can't actually meet the requirements of the contract. So it's kind of coming back to us where we're having to over document very simple things just due to liability.
Yes.
And it's costing both sides. One, it's increased cost on the install, but now it's also increased cost on the coordination side because they're having to do things they're historically not doing, where we're over documenting things that we just take for granted every single day. Like, simple mounting things. It's like, do I really need to give you like a 25-page write-up on how to mount this, insert whatever display mount or LCD mount it is? Like the instructions are in the box. Just follow those instructions, right?
I have to make drawings and elevations for all of this now for every little detail. We just had 2 TVs installed to where, long story short, the mount was rattling even though it was bolted in the concrete. And these are contractors that have done this before. But the problem is they're hiring new people that have no experience, or they're using them or, training. We have electricians that we just hired that I think they only ran conduit. They actually never done any kind of cabling. So it's been super interesting trying to figure that out. And what's really interesting on our campus is, I've got my integration business and I also work for WKU. One of our installers just quit because he wants to work on his farm, whatever. That's another topic for another day. And he wanted to work for me at $60, $65, $70 an hour.
Are you hiring?
Every Thursday.
I'm sure people are listening and it's like, man.
Yes, I'm hiring. Come to Bowling Green, Kentucky. I need help. We're hiring right now. And Western, WKU, after he quit, approached him saying, hey, do you want to work for us on contract? And his response was, well, yeah, if you pay me as much as Justin's paying me or more, because I'm already booked at my farm and I'm working every Thursday for Justin. So I can't work for WKU. So now this whole plan of all these projectors we're installing, or I just dropped a whole SM58. That's exactly what that was.
You're buying.
No, that microphone's fine.
It can
it's
handle
SM58.
It can handle it.
And so what's happening now is we're going to Nashville to find these laborers to try to help us install these projectors, and we're not sure really where that is. So we might have a bunch of material sitting around that, hey, we're all booked up, but we got to get this stuff installed. What are we going to do?
I'm not sure if this is just like the byproduct of the pandemic where people just aren't returning yet, but it's kind of trickled into a lot of different places. We're having a hard time just getting bids from folks, even where it's like they just don't have the bandwidth. They would love to if they had the bandwidth to do it, and not like they're just cheap projects, like they're real projects and real pieces of work to actually get, they're lucrative, right? And so it's kind of just funny. I don't know if it may be my market, but I just wanted to kind of see what's the sense in around the globe here, and we all kind of sit in a different piece of the United States. Is that everywhere? Are we kind of seeing that install labor shortage right now? Is it just we're so backlogged that just nothing, we just can't get out of gridlock? Is that kind of what's going on?
I think it's both.
I've noticed at least a little bit that the talent pool hasn't been as quickly refreshed. Like, you have the people who are starting to move up because there's new opportunities because everyone is so busy. And because of the pandemic and all, they just haven't filled back in. And so that, like, tier 1 basic labor who we used to have readily available has kind of, that we've seen for a couple of years and we've developed a relationship with, or we at least knew their face, that person has been snatched up by a bigger company, by a different opportunity. And there's just that turnover now with people with a little bit less experience.
Yeah, so that's got kind of like
in our region, it's been, I don't notice it as much because we really don't have integrators do much work for us. Usually it's when we do, there's a reason for it. We just turn it over and whatever, right? And I haven't noticed that some of the same phenomenons just because we do our own thing. What I'm afraid of, though, is that I am hearing things about everybody's backlogged, because we all are. And everybody's also trying to crush the let's get back up to speed projects on, or, oh, we came back to the office after a year and when we turned the power on, the white smoke came out of half of our equipment, that kind of stuff. So I'm hearing a lot of the same things that you guys are talking about. My fear in our particular case, and then I think other universities such as mine, is that we've been telling our internal clients, we've been telling them for a while, is like, hey, we don't have the manpower to complete all of this by August 20th. So we're going to start the list. We're going to start plugging away, and it may be October before we can catch up. And everybody so far has been like, okay, cool, we get it. Okay, cool, we get it. Okay, cool, we get it. I'm very afraid that somewhere at the end of July, they're going to realize that we were serious.
Oh, and then you actually meant next October, not this one coming up?
Yeah.
Jamie, do you think the issue there is you've had some people who've been functionally away from campus, that they've not really been paying attention to that, and now they all think, oh, well, we're all coming back the first week of August, so let's call the AV guys, and you're going to get 25 of these requests.
We're getting a bunch of re-requests from like 2018 and 2019 where they got canceled, where we were quote unquote broke. Oh, all this money freed up. Let's spin up all these old projects. Hey, this is approved. Whoa, that quote's 3-4 years old. Come on, we got to reevaluate this. So that's a lot of that's going on.
Our issue is that it's already on the books, and we've already even started ordering the gear's on its way. We just physically can't get it in. There's just not the time, and we keep telling them that. We're just like, hey, look, here's the reality of the situation. Now we can hire it out, but it's going to double the cost because you got to pay labor. If it's internal, you don't have to pay this, whatever the mathematics are, because some of that's outside my pay grade. But I'm just really afraid that it's going to get down to the point, to Chris's point, of because we're not there, it's okay to say, oh, it'll be September, oh, it'll be October, oh, it'll be November, December, whenever it's going to be. Until it's not okay, right? It's okay till it's not.
When the dean shows up and it's not there because their person said it would be and they didn't relay that, that's when it's going to become a problem. And
they're the ones that, have been saying it's okay, but I think in the back of their head, because over the years, we've done this. We've been like, we don't have enough time, but we'll see what we can do. And then magically we squeeze it in, right? It just gets done. But we're so backlogged, just like the rest of you, that I'm just really afraid that what they're going to say is that no question asked. I know you told us it was going to be October, but that's not acceptable anymore. Hire somebody, we'll pay it. I can't. There's nobody to hire. That's what I'm afraid of, is we get to that point where they finally decide to throw money and then that there's nobody available.
Do you think this is going to turn into a bidding war, like the housing market right now, where you're seeing people say, okay, well, what do you mean you can't do it? Well, we're booked up and doing this project. What if I pay you $5 million to come here? Well, okay, we're coming. I think over exaggeration, but
yeah, we really can't, because we've got two.
Depends on contracts.
Yeah, we have two contracts with local integrators, and the labor hours are fixed.
Okay.
Like the only time they can fluctuate is in overtime or odd hours, right? So if you ask them to work overnight or weekends, even if it's not overtime, they can change the rate, but they're still within a percentage. But it's all been pre-worked out. So in our case, I don't think that can happen. Now,
don't you think labor costs are going to go up though because of all this? Because supply and demand shortages?
Yeah, but a lot of these integrators, when they set those contracts 3 years ago, they were actually above rates. So over the last 3 years, they've been making above rate, and now they're going to make below rate. So you say, hey, your problem.
Yeah.
Look,
could
again,
this be
outside
a
my
good
pay
thing,
grade.
though? Like, ultimately, because we're
it can be.
Yeah, because we're creating a pressure differential, right? Where there is a demand for talent, a lack of people available to do the work, and that can, as to your point, drive up the cost of services, making the industry more attractive to young people who are looking for jobs, right? Because there is a lot of work. It's well paid, and it's stable. There's a lot of opportunity, and it is right there where they're going to school. It is right in front of them. So I think ultimately, like a few years down the line, this could be the beginning of a bit of a workforce renaissance for the industry.
It absolutely could, but I think
it also could go the opposite. Though.
Is it a bubble? And I think is this just like a momentary thing because of coming out of like the return? Is this just this sliver in time, or is this sustainable demand moving forward?
Nah, I don't think it's a bubble. I do think it's a spike because, it's not just higher ed, it's everybody is coming out of the pandemic and trying to play catch up and trying to rebuild their approach to like working and living and going to school. But that experimentation is going to continue for a while. And whatever answers that we land on, I don't think there's anybody who would disagree with the notion that they're going to be more AV dependent than the old ways of doing things.
Yes, but here's the negative side of that. The market for AV goods
and services is going to get bigger.
The negative side to this is we are in higher ed, and we all know that higher ed moves slower. And I know for a fact that our going market rate for salaries in a lot of universities, just like WKU, is below market. So what does that mean? Does that mean, people like us are going to keep staying, or are entry level people that get hired on and we teach them AV, then they're going to jump and go to the integrator that pays more, and we're going to be subbing more things out to integrators going forward? I don't think that's
exactly a fair comparison, though, because there are so many benefits that come to working at higher ed.
But from someone do people realize that? I agree. But do people realize that? Because I haven't had a raise in 12 years, not even cost of living raise, right? So why am I still here? For all those intangible benefits.
Because you are. I mean, the
time
fact
off,
that you
vacation,
are there means
retirement insurance, all that crap, right? But I know that. Does an 18 to 20-year-old know that? Does a 21-year-old know that? Maybe not.
Well, even if they leave for 6 months and figure that out,
come back.
They'll come back.
They'll gain some experience and be like, you know what? The grass was truly greener where I was.
Yeah.
So,
man, I've been working 80 hours a week, and I could work 37 and a half working for a university and get all this time off.
Yeah, so the piece to me that's really, sorry, Jamie, the piece that's really fascinating to me is that how many of you have experienced this compression of, I need to spend this by the end of June.
Now. And that's always happened, though, but it's worse now.
Like right now, there's just like this ton of money where it's like, I have to spend it right now. And you have to get it out of here. And so now you need commitments and it's like, well, I can spend your money. However, I can't install it until, like Jamie said, next October.
Something? Yeah.
And I can't actually receive it in most cases at this point because of all the backlogs.
I'm afraid, going back to that, the staffing thing is, it's not necessarily that technicians or experienced staffers are leaving to go to integrators. It's the decision makers deciding that, it's pretty easy to get overnight delivery from integrator X. Why do I need an internal crew?
Yeah, I don't need 10 guys when I can have, or 10, I'm sorry. I don't need 10 people when I can have 4 people and do it.
We're paying them insurance, we're paying them all this stuff and their benefits, and it costs us actually, $80,000 to hire a $50,000 employee or whatever.
And then
they could save money by going outside.
For a lot of us to build these departments and to build this culture that we can do this inside, and ultimately it is cheaper and we've changed people's minds. But then in these panic situations where you're already looking at budget cuts and you're already looking at personnel and all these other things, and you're like, well, that guy just did it. That company just did it.
Something, Jamie, I want to point out. You said it was cheaper.
All of that is, but I think we're going to lose some of that. What we've built. We've built this reputation of doing it internally. Look, you have your skill makers here. When it breaks, we can fix it. We're all over it. This is just our baby, cradle to grave the whole way through. And we've been fighting against we'll call an integrator and they'll roll a truck next week sometime, and they'll be there between 8 and 4, right? And I'm really afraid that decision makers will just see the money signs on the spreadsheet that said, well, this happened overnight, and it was ultimately cheaper.
And but not the total cost of ownership.
They don't see total cost
exactly.
And so that's that line that we're trying to fight and maintain is like, hey, look, I'm all for giving. If I'm overworked and it's best for the students, give the work to somebody else. I'm okay with that because you're getting help. We're all in this together. But I don't want that to influence somebody that's 3 desks removed to decide that I'm personally not worth it anymore. That's what
you look at that.
I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
But are you just hanging out waiting for things to come along your way? Like you're successful at your integration, your design, your deployment, you're providing really good support service for the university. Like, but how do you measure that? And do administrators understand that there is value to the organization that you represent? And like, what do you do? Like, if it seems like the sky's falling, are you hiding under your desk hoping that they don't see you and that you're just going to ride this out? Or do you go out and you champion like, hey, we're good at this. You guys have technology problems. Let us be your solution and be that value add to the institution. I think there's probably a lot of people who will just kind of hunker down and hope for the best, and they may find themselves out of a job. Like you actively have to go and engage with the university and your actual community to make sure there is value.
Agreed. And I think sometimes when most of us have that conversation.
Yeah. And I think when most of us are bringing in the outside labor, we're strategically using them for the most labor-intensive parts of the job. The structured cable pull, mounting things like that. Things that aren't the complete system, because we still need to program it to our standards. We still need to put it on the network. There's so many parts of the AV system that it's just not possible to outsource. Well, it's not wise to outsource. And so at that point, I'm not as concerned about them saying, well, this outside vendor can do it all, because they've never been able to do a complete job on our site since I've been here, because we're outsourcing only parts of the jobs.
Yeah, I think when you look at that conversation, Larry, are your staff part of IT? If yes, they're knowledge workers, are they not? They're not laborers. They're working. So do what you do well and say, okay, we own this programming, we do this deployment, we do this design. The university is not necessarily looking at you as labor. They're looking at you for your thought and your intelligence you're bringing to the table, and that's your value. Like, don't look at it as like, oh, I have to go do the same thing I can go get X labor off the street to do, because that's not your competition. Right, you're there and you're hired and you're part of it, of a culture.
And the challenge is making sure upper administration knows that.
So
right?
I want to bring up a scenario here, which is, I would say probably on this one, the extreme opposite end of what we've all been talking about. And I mentioned it to Larry today when we were both on the same call, and I won't say who, but there's a lot of schools out there. So we haven't all been talking about this balance of doing things internally and hiring out when necessary. There's a lot of schools out there who don't do their own installs and never have. And their entire model from project, for when a project comes up, is they may not even do the design. They may simply call somebody and say, I need 4 classrooms and 6 conference rooms sort of thing. And then they just buy whatever shows up, and they might do the programming, but some don't even do that. It's like entirely outsourced. And I'm wondering about some of these schools, when that's their entire model, when these integrators are getting pinched because there's so much other business right now. Like we said, everyone's coming back to the office. Everyone's coming back to campus. All these school districts are lighting back up, and they're all adding technology here and there. When they reach out to their standard integrator and they say, hey, integrator XYZ, we need to do 12 classrooms this summer. And they get a response back of, we're booked. Now what are they going to do? And I think that's where we're going to start seeing upper level admin, Jamie, to your point about the people who are 3 desks removed, maybe start asking the question of, yes, it's cheaper on paper from a strict dollars to dollars
accounting
amount, but yeah. But are we getting, and Justin, to your point, that total cost of ownership? Are we actually owning these systems, or are we now beholden to somebody else to simply be available to order boxes of stuff, install it, and walk away? And why do we still have 5 people on staff? So I don't know, just throwing that one out there. It's a model that I've seen from surprisingly large and surprisingly well-funded institutions. And I will just say, on a personal level, it bothers the crap out of me that people operate that way.
Well, I think you're setting yourself up for like budgetary shock. Because right now, if there's inflation for getting outside services done from outside organizations, and you made that decision, we're not going to have any in-house, we're just going to do whatever the market cost is, hopefully they're at least looking at, well, it's probably going to cost us more. I mean, does that decision to do that put their students at a disadvantage now? Because now they cannot afford as much that they once could when they could do it in-house. And so do they fall behind at a technology rate because they can no longer afford to pay market rate?
That's a good point. They're not getting as much for their dollar. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because you're paying more to labor.
Well, and so maybe some of the schools, and I don't have the historic knowledge at these various institutions, but maybe some of the schools, like I said, who are surprisingly well funded, let me rephrase, who are well funded but are surprisingly outsourcing all of this. Maybe that's just it's been a convenience thing. Oh, we can get bids from. well, we can get bids from 4 or 5 different integrators. It's great.
Yeah.
Off we go. And all of a sudden, when they don't get that, now what?
Yeah, it's a market for sure.
The other thing I wonder about, and we discussed it briefly here, but a lot of schools will then have, sometimes I've seen it called a contract of convenience or something, where they will have an existing contract with an integrator at a preset rate. Oh yeah, we pay these guys X dollars, so they know approximately how much a classroom costs. And I think, Jamie, you brought this up. What happens when they come back and all of a sudden that classroom is 75% more expensive because the labor rates have gone through the roof from when they did it 4 years ago, sort of thing. I think there's a lot of people out there who have not fully grokked this scenario, and there are going to be a lot of scrambling in July and August on this.
I think that's where it's going to hurt some, like in our particular case, and anybody who has that inconvenience contract, right? Convenience. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
But that it's going to get renewed. It gets renewed every couple of years, right? Every 3 or 4 years. The historical records are going to say, well, hey, look, we lost our shirt on labor because of whatever the contract was before, and now your next contract. Are you ready to absorb? Yeah, are you ready to absorb that differentiation of labor rates in 2018 and labor rates in 2020? Because taking a whole year off of a 2-year contract is a big difference right now, right? And so when does that come back to bite you? I think right now, kind of what Rachel said, it's that pendulum, right? We saw it swing way one way, and we're seeing it swing way the other way, and somewhere it's going to fall in the middle. I hope in the end it does fall above average, a little to the high side for us in particular, our group, the higher ed AV people, not the integrators, not the other, but the higher ed. I just hope that pendulum, when it finally settles, is just a little out of balance to the good side.
Yeah, I think
that's where I'm hoping.
Rachel, your perspective there I'm hoping is what we're going to see, that this is simply people recognizing the inherent value of AV integration, and while we may be on the high side of a bubble now, it's going to settle slightly but at a higher value, and show that there's this is a necessary service that has to be provided and should only be beneficial for the industry. So we'll see how that plays out. Well, we've managed to ruin yet another episode of AV Super Friends Off the Rails. You can contact us with questions, topic ideas, or general complaints at mailbag@avsuperfriends.com. If you complain loud enough, we might just invite you on the show.
Nice work, everyone. Sharp broadcast. Really good. Everyone on the floor as well. Really a lot of hustle. I liked it.
The opinions expressed by the AV Super Friends are solely those of the individuals and do not represent their respective institutions, organizations, companies, or clients.